Hey guys, it's June 4th. I'm going to have to get on with my storytelling here because, as you can see, my whiskers are starting to get pretty full and it's starting to get hot. And I vowed that I would not shave until I finish this. And I think I'm only like 19 or 20 in the last episode, so we got to move on. Ron Holmes, Creek Boy, Wellsburg, West Virginia. Oh, yes, indeed. But it's been fun, and I hope somebody gets something from my grandchildren. I love them with all my heart, and I want them to hear this. I guess some of it, they just need to know, whatever. It's not gonna hurt them. But so so here I am, 20, and they got no direction. Knew I didn't want to work in a factory. I didn't want to work in a steel mill. I didn't want to work in a coal mine. All those things. Had sort of a rough start a couple times trying to go into the military. One time with Don Kemp jumping out of airplanes, didn't pass the test, and then the other time Jim Dayob came to pick me up. We were going to go at the same time, and I had a hangover and couldn't go. So I think it was 4 months later, after Jim and all that, I decided that it was time. It was time, and it was time for a lot of reasons. In my personal life, of course, the military was just the only really viable option. Apparently, it seemed like to me, for me personally, it just seemed, here I am. I'm young, I'm strong, I'm intelligent, and I'm very patriotic. I was raised in my early youth on military bases, and it's ingrained in me. It is, and at that time, um, I believed in America, and I believed in our government, and I believed that their virtue, and I had no idea that they were lying about Vietnam and all that. But regardless of that, I felt that it was my duty for one, and a good path for another. And I wasn't real bright. It was something to do. It was something to do. Well, all right. So I've decided that it's time. I'm living in Louise in the little coal camp with my mom, and yeah, there's no problems and all. My mother was always loved me, always good to me, always had a home. And that went as long as she lived, and so it was time, and I contacted the people, signed up, and my mom and dad took me down to the bus station in Steubenville, Ohio, and I was going to leave from there to the Air Force. So they dropped me off at the bus station. I go in there, and lo and behold, a guy that I went. Ooh, my camera about fell over there, huh? A guy that I went to high school with. He was a year or two younger, Jimmy Lalonde, and Jimmy, he was a great guy. We had we ended up having some really good times, and I loved him to this day. I just love the thought of him. He was fun, but. So I go over and I sit down and I recognized him, So we speak, and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going in the Air Force." I said, "You are? You're kidding me." He said, "No." I said, "Well, that's what I'm doing too." So we got on the bus, and we ended up that we went through basic training together in the same unit. They call them flights in the Air Force. So we ended up going to basic training together in the same unit, and endeavored to support one another and get through this basic training process. Now, there's a lot of inter service rivalry as far as the Marines are the macho guys, so on and so forth. I don't care what branch of the military you go in. I really don't. basic training has, it's got a purpose, you know, and that purpose is to break you down. That purpose is to make you blindly obedient. You know, I mean, you know, if some guy tells you run at this machine gun, and you've just watched you know, 300 or 400 people run at it, and they're all laying out there dead, and he said you run at it, and you're supposed to obey, you know, and people do, you know, that's what it's about. Well, they try you, and they break you down, and they make you obedient, you know. Well, I really, you know, I didn't know what to expect in basic training, and Jimmy didn't either, you know. So we pull up, you know, and it was really interesting. They did, you know, it's the whole deal. They're yelling and screaming, and they shave your head and make you stand in line and get all these shots and the blood's pouring down your arm. You know, you're marching here and there, and it's hot, and exercise and classes and memorization and you know, the whole inspect this, inspect that, and so here, you know, we're off at it, and and I want to say, anybody, it doesn't make any difference what branch, you know, what era, you know, even, you know, people say, oh, now basic training's so easy. Well, I doubt it. You know, it may not be as bad now. I mean, the like the Marine Corps boot camp in during the Vietnam War, it was vicious. You know, it really was. That was an extraordinary thing, but just regular old young guys, you know, and so so Jimmy and I ride. We ride the bus, and then we ride the plane, and then we get on another bus, and this bus is the one that's taking us to Lackland Air Force Base. So it's May 13th, 1975. The Vietnam War had officially ended for the United States only 6 or 8 days before that. And I didn't know that, but I found out later when I found out I didn't have any war era service, you know, because Vietnam was over. They declared it over. And so there were some benefits I could have gotten if I would have been 6 days earlier. But yeah, I mean, it was extremely beneficial. My military time was beneficial. It taught me a lot of things. It made me grow up, you know, and then some things it aggravated that were lying there and, you know, fermenting, like the drinking, you know. And in 1975, make no mistake, the military was a drinking club. That was it. You know, if you went to the NCO club or the officers club or enlisted club, the club was a drinking place. And when you went to people's houses, you drank. You know, you went to barracks, you drank. Everybody drinking all the time. You know, so that wasn't necessarily good for me at all. But that was just life, and you know, so it was on. So now, so Jimmy and I get in the. Oh, I should have looked up the numbers and all that. Our squadron kind of things, you know, and all that stuff. But it was interesting, you know, because it just gets all this crazy and chaotic and and I'll tell you something funny because it was really stressful, you know, and they make it stressful, and people crack, you know, people they, you know, guys that start out, they're no longer there, you know, they sort of disappear, you know. There's all kinds of stuff happens, you know. People get weird and they haul them off, and you say, hey, you know, what happened to them? And they always have these rumors of, you know, they can make you disappear too, but if you don't act right. But so after about 2 weeks of this madness, you know, and I can't, you know, it's several weeks long. It's 6, 8, 10, 12, yeah, it goes on. But and Okay, we're West Virginia boys. We're tough. We can do this. This is, the physical requirements and all that stuff. It wasn't bad, but I'm telling you, the mental stress and all that, it was ugly. It was ugly. So Jimmy, he came to me and he says, "Look, let's tell them that we're gay and they'll let us go home." And I said, "What?" Well, of course, back then, in 1975, you weren't flying no flags in the military back then because they put you out immediately. And I said, "What, Jimmy?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "This is crazy, man." He said, we just tell them that we're gay. They'll throw us out. We go on home and just forget about it. I said, "Come on, Jimmy. It's only been 2 weeks, man. Just hold on. It'll get better. It'll get better." Well, I don't know how much longer it was. It was a week later, but finally, yeah. After I think it was only like 2 3 weeks left, and and I went to Jimmy and I said, "Jim, I'm ready. let's go tell them that we're gay. I'm gonna get out of here." He said, "We only got 2 weeks left." He said, "Come on, man." And I said, yeah, you're right. Okay." So, yeah, we survived basic training, and Jimmy and I did, and it was it did what it was supposed to do. I mean, it turned you into a military person. It affects your thinking dramatically. All that, and really, as far as character and all that, it really is very beneficial. And most of my life, I'll be 70 here in a couple of weeks, but most of my life, I've held the opinion that young people should go in the military for a couple of years. A lot of countries do that, and that it would be beneficial to every. Yeah, I'm just going to say young boys because girls drafting girls and all that was ridiculous back then, but for a young man to go into the military, I felt that it helped him. And in my day, if somebody got in trouble with the law, the judge would tell them you go to jail or you go to the military, and they'd go to the military, and man, that military, they'd come out of there and we'd say, "Whoa, what happened here to this person?" So, yeah, it was good. So, all right, so I get out of basic training and go home. I think it was like a 10-day leave. Well, let me tell you about a couple things that happened in the basic training. Um, I told you I wasn't assigned a particular job. I wasn't guaranteed a job. I was guaranteed a field. I was guaranteed the mechanical field, and so they called me out of the class or something. I don't know what it was in basic training, and they sent me over to a building, and they had a group of us guys in there in this room, and they showed a film on being a weapons mechanic. Of course, I didn't know what a weapons mechanic was, and most of you probably don't either. But what a weapons mechanic is a bomb loader. Somebody has to strap those missiles and those bombs and all that, and in the planes, and it's called a weapons mechanic. Maintain those systems, and so I watched this thing and loading bombs and loading missiles on planes and helicopters and all that, and they sent us into a room with a bunch of old guys, old civil servants. They're sitting there and interviewing us, the guys that were in the room, one at a time, and so I sat down with this old fellow, and he was I say old, he was old. He was in his 60s, like completely gray and all that, and he had his glasses. I'm going to show you. I got my glasses here, sort of a prop, I guess I'll say. All right, so he starts asking me questions, about my life and about my family and about my history, and all this stuff, and I don't know what's going on here. So, eventually he says, have you ever been in a fight before? And I laughed at him. I said, well, yeah, are you kidding? Sure. And he says, he said, how many? How many fights do you think you've been in? Wow. Since when? I said, from when to when? Talking about last year, 5 years? What are you talking about? He says, oh, let's say since you're maybe 16, okay? And I was 20, so I turned 21 in basic, by the way. That was exciting. but but so I was 21. It had been 5 years, and I said, well, I don't know, maybe 25, something like that. And the guy, he has these glasses on, you know. He's like this, and he slides his glasses down, and he looks over, and he said, you've been in 25 fights since you were 16? I said, well, yeah. He says, what were you fighting about? I said, well, people being jerks, mess with your girl, mess with your brother, mess with your mama, mess with you. I said, guys, they say stuff, they do things. And so the guy, he just took his glasses off, folded it up, and that was the end of the case. Needless to say, I did not become a weapons mechanic. They disqualified me. Interesting. And well, it didn't make any difference to me what I did, honestly, But it ended up they assigned me to machinist school. Okay, so they said, okay, well, you're going to be a machinist and so on, and your duty station is going to be Chanute Air Force Base, which is a big training center in Illinois. And I said, okay, so I'm going to Illinois. Well, getting ready to leave the place and all that, and they look down and they say, oh, so you got a temporary duty in Aberdeen, Maryland. I said, what? They said, yeah, your records are going to be in Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois, but you're going to be going to machinist school at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland, which was an Army base. So I ended up, okay, well, I'll go to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland, So it was closer to home. It was, I think it was all around beneficial for me. I mean, I learned a lot more of being a machinist in the military than I would have learned loading bombs, I mean, there was transferable skill anyway. So consequently, I ended up going to Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Army base, and there was an Air Force contingent of about 40 people there. They had the machinist and the parachute rigging. Air Force guys went to Army school. I don't know why, but that was what they did. So there were 40 Air Force guys. This base had thousands and thousands of guys. It was a regular Army training center, proving grounds, and so they had big old wooden 3-story barracks buildings, and the Air Force contingency that had to live in the barracks and was attending school, we had half of the third floor of one of those buildings. And so honestly, this was our AIT, our Advanced Individual Training or whatever. But it was a sweet thing because we didn't have us little group of Air Force guys. They didn't mess with us, They just left us alone. We just stayed up there. The buildings had fire guards on every floor, and they rotated the people in fire guard. We didn't have to do fire guard. We didn't have to do the KP, the kitchen stuff. We didn't have to do any of those things. Matter of fact, we didn't have to do PT. We didn't have to do physical training, you know. we just hung out, and and we went to machinist school, and so it was good. I liked Aberdeen. I liked the base. They had a there was an arms museum there. It had like 100 tanks sitting out there and all this stuff. It was a cool place, and it wasn't that far from home, you know. Maryland, West Virginia, it wasn't that far. Now, I didn't get a car. Matter of fact, I never did get a car the whole time I was in the military. It just wasn't a big deal. I was living on a base, I walked everywhere, and I didn't want to spend the money, so uh, I didn't. It wasn't like I was running back and forth, all the time and all that. But when I got done with school and went back home uh, for another leave, uh, I had gotten a duty station, a permanent duty station. Once again, I ended up at this Chanute, Illinois, and I thought, oh my God, they're going to be sending me to Illinois. I don't even know anything about this place, this Illinois. All I know is cornfields. Well, so I'm talking with the guys. Everybody's getting their assignments and stuff, and and one of the guys said, he said, well, that's where I'm from. He said, I'll trade you, because you could trade assignments at that point. They didn't care. You just trade your name, and it was fine. They didn't care. And so I traded with this guy for Albuquerque, New Mexico. All right. Now, what did I know about Albuquerque, New Mexico? Well, all I knew about Albuquerque was that it's the hot air ballooning capital of the country, and it's out west, and it's got these wild mountains and stuff. And I thought, all right, well, that's me. This going up living in some old flat cornfield, and I don't get it. So I had the opportunity. I traded. And I went home, and of course, wow. I mean, it was on the the partying was it was pretty serious. I mean, yeah. Anytime I came home, wow, yeah, it was wide open. It was the whole wine, women, and song, and yeah, and by then, of course, the drug use in West Virginia and the military was pretty rampant, and so now, like in basic training and in the schooling and all that, there I wasn't exposed to any of that. So it helped me dry out. It helped me leave the drugs behind and the drinking until I got to the school. But so while I'm at home, I sent my stuff. I had stuff that I carried while I went on my 10 days leave, but I sent the bulk of my stuff, my uniforms, all that stuff. I sent it to Albuquerque ahead. They shipped it, and while I was home, I got the only telegram that I've ever received in my life. I got a telegram from the United States government informing me that my duty station had been changed. I was supposed to go work for this research and development place in Albuquerque, at Kirtland Air Force Base. It was research and development. Well, somehow, some way, over the course of this little brief time, they decided that they were going to curtail the research and development at that location. So they took the liberty to send my stuff to Charleston, South Carolina instead. Well, I didn't know anything about Albuquerque. You got to remember now, this is West Virginia Creek boy, right? He's been hauled off to San Antonio, Texas. Now he's been hauled off to Aberdeen, Maryland, right? And so he's getting hauled off now to Charleston, South Carolina, which I had no concept, nothing to go on, I freaked out. I called the recruiter. I called. I said, "Hey, what is this? What's this, Charleston? What have they done to me here? And oh, don't worry. Yeah, everything's don't worry. And so I changed all my stuff and ended up going to Charleston, South Carolina, which now, in hindsight, Charleston probably was better than Albuquerque, and Albuquerque definitely was better than Chanute Air Force Base. So I was actually moving up. As far as 21-year-old boy goes, yeah. Suddenly now I'm living. It was like what do I think? A 20-minute drive to 4 different beaches. From the base there. So, you gotta remember West Virginia Creek boy. Yowza, suddenly, oh, man, I got all this stuff. And, I'm living in South Carolina, man, it's flat, it's marshy. And there's, in Charleston, it's right on the coast. And, so there's the ocean. And not only just the ocean, but the ocean with major beaches and, Johns Island and James Island and Foley Island, all these beaches. So I thought, oh, okay, great, man. I said, this is going to be all right, and they give me a room in a barracks, and of course the Air Force. I love the military. I love all the branches of the military, but believe you me, when you start doing the comparisons of everyday life and everything, Air Force is pretty good. It was good. And so I get assigned to the 437th Field Maintenance Squadron at Charleston Air Force Base as a machinist, and they put me in this barracks, and it wasn't a wooden barracks, it was a block barracks, and I think it was only 2 stories. It wasn't those big things that they had in the Army. It was 2 stories. And not only that, but man, I mean, you thought you were walking down the hallway of a motel, because there are rooms on both sides, and each room, well, oh, not all of them were 2 people, but my room was a 2-person room, right? There, yeah, I went in my room. There's straight ahead. There was a double bunk. To the left was closets, there's like 2 for each person, and some furniture and stuff. So, and then there was a bathroom that we shared with the other room next to us. So I'm put in this room, and I thought, okay, what goes on here, and I go out and start exploring around, and I run into this guy just down the hall. He came. Matter of fact, he came down and knocked on my door. His name was Dave Mallett, Mallett, and so Dave comes knocking on my door. He says, "Hey, where you from, man?" And I said, "I'm from West Virginia. Where are you from?" He said, "Oh, I'm from West Virginia too." Oh, great, So Dave invites me down to his room, and I'm telling you, and it just seems like this just is magnetic in this phase of life that this kind of stuff happens. But so he said, well, he says, you party, and I said, well, yeah. So he said, well, come on down to my room. So I go down to his room, and this is in a military barracks, right? And we go in there and shut the door, and he's in there. He's by himself. He doesn't have a roommate. I have a roommate eventually, but he doesn't have a roommate. So we go in there, and he pulls out a roll of duct tape, and he duct taped all around the door that went out to the hallway, and then he put a couple pieces of duct tape around the bathroom, and so on and so forth, so the smoke couldn't get out in the building. And he lifted up the mattress on his bed, and there were bags of pot lying. I don't know how much. I mean, it had to be at least a pound of marijuana he had right there under his mattress. And I thought, oh boy, here we go, and so yeah, I mean, it really was. It was on then, and and that that period of time there in Charleston, it was it was a time of personal growth. It was a time of challenge. It was a time of I don't know, youthful confusion. It just seemed like I was still spinning my tires. It was just one of those things. Um, I'm doing all these things, and I don't know what I want to be and what I want to do when I grow up, and so I'm giving this machinist. Machinist is you fabricate things from metal. Everything's metal, and it was all new to me. I had no experience whatsoever until I attended the school. I didn't even know what it was. I thought I was going to be actually working on some sort of machines and repairing them, machinist. But I didn't know that I was going to be the one making the machines and all that, the parts. But I'm doing this, and it really is challenging. But then, I think one of my major problems was just the whoops, I'm about to fall down again. Uh, my major problem was just focus. You know, it was focus. I was there, and I sort of in my mind I had a plan. I had a plan that I was going to spend my time, and then I was going to take classes and so on while I was in the military and get out and go to school. So I had sort of a plan that way. But as far as feeling as though I was on track and growing, um, I didn't necessarily feel that way, and it ended up, a young fellow without focus, and his mama ain't around. I tended to lean towards mischief. Of course, this the whole thing with the girls. That didn't change at all there. I mean, it didn't change at all. Yeah, it was sort of continued to be pretty ridiculous, in my thinking. But that was always a factor in causing complications and all. But so so consequently, um, I ended up falling into sort of a routine, and I met some great people. I really did. The military, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and all those things. It's for real, and it's not that I'm a combat veteran, and the guys that I was stationed with and lived with, they they weren't facing those kind of issues and all that, but you're a part of it. I mean, you're a part of a team. You're a part of a brotherhood. You're a part of a mission. You're a part of an organization that has a proud history, and it really does. And of course, my father Ted, who I thought was my father, um, he was a member of what they call the Brown Shoe Army. That the Brown Shoe Army was when the Air Force was first being created and planes were being used in warfare. The Army was in charge of it, and they ended up like having an Army Air Corps, and they wore brown shoes instead of black shoes, and so they called them the Brown Shoe Army. So my dad, he was one of the founding um, members or whatever of the Air Force, and it was drilled into me when I was a kid. Patriotism and the whole thing, it was drilled into me. Of course, my mom, she was militaristic. She really was. I mean, she was German. She had it in her, and she played military music to us when we were kids. And so the whole concept and all that of the military is ingrained in me, ingrained in my family, and all that. I believe in it, but I don't think I ever did finish my thought when I said that before. Our government, our government does not do justice to those men and women. They don't do justice. There's too much sneaky stuff. They're getting sent to too many places for too many stupid things, and they're fighting wars that there's no plan to end. You know, they're put into these helpless situations. Put a couple hundred people in this little place in Africa or in the Middle East or in the jungle here or there, and man, they're on their own. Yeah, it's sad what our guys are doing when you know the whole policeman of the world. That's not what we're supposed to be doing, and and I don't want to give one of my sons or grandsons to a cause that is not American. You know, I don't think that we got any business in that Middle Eastern rot pit, And I'm from there. You gotta remember, half Libyan, right? And I don't care, man. The Middle East is a garbage pile. People are nuts, and our guys don't need to be there. They've been fighting for thousands of years, and as long as the world exists, they will continue. They will. Are you going to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict? No, no. Could Reagan do it? No. Could Carter do it? No. Could Clinton do it? No. I mean, Donald Trump, if ever there was a man with a true heart and wanted to impact our whole world in a positive way, he couldn't get it done, man. He couldn't get it done. He couldn't. But one thing he did do was he made us energy independent. And if you're energy independent, you don't need those people. You don't need them. Why get involved with them? The Shias are going to fight the Sunnis, and the Druze are going to fight the Maronites. Everybody's fighting everybody, and I think I may have said it, but I'll say it again. My mom told me when I was a kid. Of course, I was living in a Arab country with my first memories, and she seemed to be quite familiar with them and their culture, obviously, because she had a couple of kids with them. And she said something to me just as a kid, and I thought, what? She said, never trust Arabs. And I said, why is that? She said, well, lying is a part of their religion. And she said, they have this saying that says, me against my cousin, and my cousin and me against you. So she says, they fight, they cheat, they lie, they steal. They do all these things. And I think, well, are we going to change them? No. Are we going to make them love Jews? No. Leave them alone, man. Let them go at it. They'll sell whoever the oil, because they need the money. What are they doing in those old sand pits? It's not like they're going to say, "Oh, we're going to quit selling oil to the world, and we're going to start growing, more kumquats or whatever." I mean, they live in deserts. Their people are stupid. They got oil. Use it. And well, so never mind. All right. So where are we at here? The military. It was a benefit to me, but I don't think with the fluctuation in governments. I mean, if you would have gone in when, let's say, Donald Trump was elected, I'm telling you, those guys were on a roll. Trump took care of them. Trump took care of the Veterans Administration hospitals. Trump took care of the guys. He took care of the girls. He took care of the equipment. He took care of the supplies. He took care, and we had no wars. We were tangled up in a couple little things he wanted to pull out. and his advisor said, no, no, don't pull out. You know, we should have pulled out of Afghanistan when Trump was president. We wouldn't have had that big humiliation. Biden's a complete idiot. But if your son or you, if you would have gone in when Donald Trump was president, there was a pride, there was a patriotism, there was a nationalism, there was a an American renaissance going on. You know, I mean, if you would have started during that time period, it was great guns for the military in every regard, right? But then, next election, Joe Biden, and it's an embarrassment. You know, I'm telling you, you know, they want their transsexual brigades. They're paying dudes to transition to women and women transition to men. You know, they're accepting all that stuff. I told you when I was in, they'd throw your butt out. You know, they say, "Hey, weirdo, we don't need you in the shower with these guys." And so, so I'm hesitant. I really am. You know, now, and I hate to say this at 70 years old, but I get really concerned when I start hearing young people say, I'm going to go into the military. And I'm thinking, wow, man, what is that clown going to do to you? What is he going to do to you? He going to indoctrinate you in critical race theory and, you know, tell you that the military is full of white supremacists. That's a bunch of bull. You know? Yeah, the critical race theory. You know, white people aren't evil. No people are evil. It's individuals, and you can call whoever you want evil because there's plenty to go around. But we shouldn't be teaching grown men to hate other grown men racially and to be ashamed of what they are, whatever they're born. You know, come on. So, be careful. You know, the young kids, be careful. Our country needs you, yes, but do we really need to send you here, there, and everywhere and give you the potential to get killed for nothing? You know, for nothing, has nothing to do. You know, I'm sorry, the Middle East has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my grandchildren. It has nothing to do with my taxes. Nothing. And so, uh, could it be positive? Yeah. Is our leadership going to change? Well, it has to. Is it going to be better? Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm scared. I really am. I have not experienced a time like the time we're living in. But that I'm talking about history now, and I'm getting off on current events. But so so in the military, I'm having a grand time. You know, we're partying. I'm finding friends, and we're running around. We're going to the beach, and I meet a friend that I've had for years, a little Mexican guy. He was standing in one of the lines I was in, processing in. He was getting there at the same time too, and he was a jet engine mechanic. You know, we were standing in line, and and he was a lot of fun. He's Jimmy Cepeda, Sepeda, Cepeda. Jimmy was from Texas. He was from Austin, Texas, and of course, I'm from a small town in West Virginia, and we became friends and hung out together. I would say, you know, as far as the military, he was my best friend. You know, he really was, and I still love him to this day. Would do anything for him. If he called me today and said I need you in Texas in 20 hours, I'd get in the car and leave. You know. But so, well, Jimmy, he was a friend, and well, he was a sergeant, you know, so he was a little bit older than me. He'd been in a little bit longer and all. He was a sergeant, and I was I think I ended up, you know, like airman first class, you know, whatever, and and we ran around together, and we had a grand time, you know. I mean, he's a Texas boy out here in South Carolina around all these these Southerners and people and stuff, and the beaches, and Austin is in the middle of Texas, so you got to drive a pretty good hike to get to water from Austin. And so Jimmy bought a '69 Camaro, right? I told you I didn't have a car. Well, it ended up I didn't need one because Jimmy and I ran around together, and he drove, and his car was cool. I mean, it was '69 Camaro. It was like a not a medium blue. It was a nice blue with a black vinyl top, and it was jacked up. Had some nice tires on the back and all that stuff. And it sounded good. It looked good. It sounded good, and we zoomed around. It was a 4 speed, and so we go to the beach, we go here, we go there, and I was it 2 or 3 times. We drove up to West Virginia for a few days for leave, and he got to hang out with my family and friends, and we partied together and all that. Yeah, Jimmy is a great human being, great man. Well, so we're hanging out and going places, and just having fun, really having fun. Uh, but also, there's we're, we're going to start to get a little bit on the edge here, because uh, when you're in the military, you're living on a military base. I was living on a military base, and there's several thousand people there, but it's a little fenced in area, and they got a whole police department. They had like 350 cops on this base, this little old base. So those guys were roaming around everywhere. They were climbing trees outside the barracks, looking in the windows, see if they catch somebody smoking pot. They're always out, trying to catch a speeder. It was a big deal for them to get somebody pulled over. But we started getting a little edgy. You know, we Jimmy and I were talking about moving into this old house, and we needed to fix it up. Well, we ended up one of the guys that was involved with it got mad at us, and he told the police that we were getting cleaning supplies and a few materials to work on this house, and because we didn't get any BAQ. We didn't get any housing pay or anything like that. And if we didn't live in the barracks, it all came out of our pockets. So we thought, hey, if we were married, they would give us a big old check and all that. Take a few cleaning supplies or nails or whatever. So this kid that was in on it with us, he was nasty. Ended up that we finally, before we got the place fixed, we told him that we didn't want him. We didn't want him to be a roommate because he was so nasty. Well, he went to the cops and got us in trouble. It wasn't bad. I mean, we didn't get charged or anything. We got called in, and well, we decided, we're not moving in that house with them. So we didn't move off base together. I did move off base with a guy. He was a machinist. Ray Hawk was his name, and he was a staff sergeant. He wasn't. He was probably 30. He was a young guy. Well, I doubt he was even 30. But he was from Tennessee, and he asked me if I wanted to move in, this mobile home with him and another guy. And it was just right off the base, right? The gate. You could almost see the gate from this place. So, I didn't have a car. I thought, well, I can ride my bicycle because it was just like a mile or 2 miles or whatever. And I was cycling a lot. I had a really nice bike. I said, yeah, I'm gonna move out there. I'm just gonna ride my bike back and forth to work, and I did, and it was good. It was good. So things are going along well. How did it all start? Okay. All right. So while I'm living in this mobile home, my dear brother Rick decides he's going to come visit me, because I'm his big brother. We've been friends and brothers for our whole lives. And so he's going to come and visit. And he brings one of our friends, John Hudspeth, we called him Huddy, with him, and he comes up to my mobile home, and all right, it's on. Let's party. Let's head to the beach. And so I said, well, okay, let's go. And my bicycle had a flat tire. Remember I told you I rode my bike back and forth to work? Well, my bike had a flat tire. So I asked my brother. I said, well, on the way to the beach, drive through the base and take me to the BX. I'm going to get an inner tube for my bike. I didn't think to find one out in the civilian world. And my brother said, no. He said, I'm not going on that base, man. He said, they got cops all over the place. You got to get through that gate and all that. He said, no, no. He said, I'm not going there. Well, of course, the reason that he wasn't wanting to go on the base was because he had, we all had pot. Huddy had a bag of weed. My brother had a bag of weed. I'm sure I had some somewhere, somehow, at least at my house. And he says, I'm not going. I'm not driving on that base. It's too much potential for trouble. And I said, oh, you big baby. I said, I'll drive your car. I'll drive through the gate, show them my ID. They just wave me through. And I said, it's no big deal. So he finally acquiesced. He said, okay, I'll do it. So I get behind the wheel of the car. I drive to the base. We got our beach stuff in the trunk. They got their suitcase and all that out, but they had their beach stuff, and we're headed to the beach. We got a cooler of beer. We're ready to go. Pull up to the gate. I flash my ID, and the guard says, "Sir, I need you." Well, first he says, "By order of the base commander, every 12th car is to be physically inspected, and I need you to pull your car over there." And I said, "Oh no!" So I pulled my car off to the side of the little slot, and I'm in the driver's seat. Rick is in the passenger seat, and Huddy's in the back seat. Okay. So this guy comes over to my window, and he says, "Does this car belong to you?" And I said, "No, sir, it does not." And he says, "Do I have your permission to inspect the vehicle?" And I said, "No, sir, you do not." He said, "Get out of the car and open the trunk." You're in the army now. I mean, you're in the military, boy. You do what you're told. Rights. What are rights? he, he says, "Get out of the car and open the trunk." And Rick is freaking flat out. So we have to get out of the car, and one of those guys gets down in the driver's area, and he starts pulling out. These guys have been traveling, smoking weed, and drinking beer. He starts pulling out roaches and seeds and paraphernalia. Oh no! Oh no! And he says, "Oh," he said, "Look at what's this? What's this? What's this?" And so the guy in the back that was checking through the trunk, he says, "Oh, well, what have we here?" Well, he had, I think it was Rick's beach bag, and he reached in there and he pulled out a bag of pot, plastic bag of weed, dangles it, and he says, "Well, what is this here?" And so we're busted. It's over. He puts that bag back inside the bag, puts it back in the trunk, and closes it. And they put us in the guard shack there, the guard station. And then they ended up, man, it was awful. They called the sheriff's department. They called the Office of Special Investigation. They got these investigators off the golf course. They had their golf cleats on and stuff. Yeah. Oh god, those big criminals at the gate. Well, it was a complicated situation, and they didn't know what to do. All right, so here's the circumstances. I was driving a car that didn't belong to me. I'm in the military, and the owner of the car is not. The owner of the car is sitting next to me. and he, well, he didn't even want to be there, of course, but he was not involved in it. They didn't even say anything to him. They said, okay, well, and so when they got the local cop there, and they got these detectives, and they got all these. I mean, there's like 8, 10, 12 different law enforcement people there. Yeah, it was like a big deal for them. And so finally, they didn't know what to do. All right. So they told us. They said he gave me my keys. And he said you guys get in your car, drive the car down to the police station. We got to sort this out. Down to the MP's security police station. So Rick and Huddy and I get in the car, and I'm telling you, you talk about giving me the down the road now, man. Rick, he chewed me. What can you say? It was my fault, 100%. So we get down there, and they have us all three sitting in these folding chairs, this wall in this office kind of area out. And so this county cop comes out because there's a jurisdiction issue here, you know. They don't know who has jurisdiction for what, you know. The pot that they found was in a car that didn't belong to the driver but belonged to the passenger, and the driver was military, and he was under the jurisdiction of the gate guards, and the passenger wasn't. And I told them that they didn't have permission to search the vehicle, and they searched it anyway, right? So, all right. So we're sitting there. They got us though. I mean, come on, man. These guys, they got the guns. They got the authority, and they've got us. So we're sitting lined up in this chair. Supposed to be at the beach now, rather dejected to say the least. And so so this guy comes out, and I was the first. He walks up to me. He said, "Do you know anything about a bag of green vegetable-like substance that policeman said he saw in the back of the car?" I said, "Oh no, man, I got no idea. I'm shocked." And he goes down to Huddy. Do you have any? You know anything about this bag of green vegetable? No, no, man, no, not me. Goes my brother. Do you know anything about this bag of green vegetable-like substance? Rick says, "Oh, no idea, brother. I mean, no idea." So finally, the cop leans over so none of the Air Force people can hear. They're not there. They're people sitting around. So the cop leans over and he says, "Look, guys, cut the BS." He said, "Who's the car belong to?" And Rick says, "Me." Right? The cop says, "Look, open the trunk, give me the bag, and you guys get out of here." And I looked at Rick, and Rick looked at me, and we said, "Okay." Okay. So we went out, and that was how it worked. We just went outside, all three of us, opened up the trunk, pulled out this little baggie of weed, gave it to Officer Friendly. He sent us down the road. Well, and of course we got out of there, and I mean, whoa, hallelujah. And Jimmy reaches under the passenger seat, and he pulls out another bag of weed. So there was 2 bags of weed and all this other stuff in that car, and they got one of them, and that was all. We ended up going to the beach and drinking beer and carrying on and having a good time while they were there. But the problem was though that suddenly they're looking at me. I mean, there was a report. There was an incident report. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get charged with anything. It was nothing like that, right? But it was an ordeal, and now they got my name, and they're interested. Right? They're interested. So the bottom line was, from that point on, it was it was silly. It was like sort of a cat and mouse thing and all that, and and I had I'd been having a good time and so on and so forth, but it was sort of starting to get on my nerves, because when I was in West Virginia, I didn't get in any trouble. I was never being pursued by any law enforcement people. And, I was doing the same stuff I always did. So the next thing I know, they're on me, well, along comes this opportunity. You know, I forgot. Well, yeah, they called me in. My captain called me in over this incident, and he said, "Hey, what went on here?" Of course, I was innocent. I was totally innocent. I mean, how could I possibly get caught up in that ordeal with my brother? And he was just passing through, and he didn't go for it. Ended up, he sent me this drug rehabilitation class, which, of course, it was sort of ridiculous. But one of the things during that drug rehabilitation class, I thought, what are these people doing this to me for? I didn't hurt anybody, and so one of their things, the guy was going around the room. He said, he said, "What's your goals?" He said, they're trying to inspire us to, not drink and do drugs and stuff. What are your goals? And he went around the room. He said, asked me. He said, "What's your goal?" I said, "My goal is to get out of the Air Force so I can get some peace." He said, "Well, you need to do it." And so it wasn't much longer, and this new program came out. Of course, Jimmy Carter's president, and the military's looking ugly, and so they started this. What was it? What did they call it? Oh, force reduction. Yeah, post Vietnam. So it's after Vietnam. Our military was extremely bloated for Vietnam. And so they were cutting back. Democrats do it all the time. Anytime Democrats get elected, they cut the military back. So these guys were cutting the military back, and they came around and basically said, "Any of y'all want to go home?" And the only qualifications was there had to be an overage in the Air Force in your field machinist, and there was an overage according to what it should have been. And then there had to be an overage on your particular base, your duty station, which in Charleston there. And I mean, the reason they asked me if I wanted to do it was because there was an overage. And then there had to be an overage at the local reserve station, the Air Force Reserve base that you're from, going back to. So Pittsburgh had an Air Force Reserve unit, and they had an overage. I mean, it was bloated. So then they said you had to have a job, and my brother set me up with this. It was a fake job, really. Him and his roommates bought a tennis racket stringing gear, and they went around trying to convince sporting goods stores to let them restring tennis rackets for them, and so they had an official business and a license. So they offered me a job. Wasn't that nice of them? Of course it was fake. I didn't really work for them, but they just said, "Okay, you can go home." So the military, years ago, if you went in the Army, it was normally for 2 years. Air Force was a 4-year assignment normally, but you could re-up for 2 years or whatever. So, but the bottom line was that to be eligible for military benefits, you have to serve for 2 years. Well, it ended up 2 years, 2 months, and 15 days after I enlisted, they said, "Okay, we don't need you. You can go home." And it was over. So I left. I said, "Oh, thank you guys. It was fun." And it ended up I flew back home and started life anew, right? So the military, uh, it was so, it's been so beneficial to me, you know, over over the years. It has been beneficial. My brother, let me just tell you the story. My brother Rob was in the army, but he ended up getting brain cancer just 2 3 years ago, and he had several brain surgeries and ended up dying. But his wife told me, said, hey, you need to check into your military benefits because I hadn't used. I went home. I used the schooling benefits, but these other things I thought that was for retirees. But nonetheless, I'm a part of the military medical system. I'm 70 years old. I mean, they're giving me hearing aids and glasses and corrective shoes. They're doing all kinds of things for me. My sister-in-law told me that they'd have been completely bankrupt if it wasn't for the military. So I signed up, and it was good. And I did end up eventually. When I got out, I wanted to take some classes and get a degree and get a little more serious in life, and so it started a whole different thing for me, and opportunities. I was able to attend college back then. The GI Bill, you went to school and they sent you a check every month. They paid you to go to school. They paid for the schooling, and you had money left over, right? So I started going to school with the military and ended up getting a degree in HVAC, heating, venting, and air conditioning. If you don't know what that is, yeah. So I got an HVAC degree with it. I've used it with medical stuff. They have been really really good to me, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate every man or woman that's in uniform. I really do. I mean, um, I gave my life over. I let them break me down emotionally, mentally, and start over again in their image. And I let them do that. Was there danger? Well, there always there's always danger. You know, anybody in the military, there's always danger. You say you're a machinist, you're working in a shop. Well, if you get sent to a place that's in a war zone, Air Force guys get blown up, Navy guys get blown up, Marines, Army, they all get blown up, and then you get hurt. I got my hand caught. Oh, I had an aileron flap closed. Well, it was my right hand closed up, caught my thumb, and they were doing a hydraulic check under the big plane's wing. I worked on C-141 Starlifters airplanes, while I was stationed at Charleston there. That Charleston was a C-5 base. C-5 is a huge cargo plane. I think we built one bigger now, but back then the C-5 was the granddaddy. It was huge, and they ended up reassigning the C-5s to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, and Charleston, where I was stationed, we got the C-141, which was a smaller cargo plane. So I worked on cargo planes, and I'm telling you, it was interesting. I loved the planes. I loved so many things about the military, but I was too young and impetuous. I was, you know. I think most people that go in the military and don't stay, most of them think, "Wow, man, you know, I went in when I was 18. I could have retired at 38 and collected benefits." And of course, they didn't pay us much back then. They pay well now, but yeah, I mean, it was an opportunity. It is an opportunity, and it started me in traveling and seeing the world and exploring new thoughts and concepts and skills. I mean, there's a lot to it. There is a lot to it, and it was just all around beneficial. Do I recommend it? Uh, Not if Joe Biden's president. I mean, run for your life. If I was in the military now, I'd quit. I would. It's just a disgrace. But neither here nor there. When you're in, you don't have a choice. You go. You do what you're told. Yep. And that's why I went home. All right. So I'm trying. There are military instances, you know. I mean, there are things that transpired and all that I may mention later. But my stint at Charleston Air Force Base was really good. The people there, the guys I worked with in the shop, you know, it helped me. This one guy I had a lot of respect for. He was in his 50s. You know, his name was Bill Hemphill, and so you know I was young and I was out partying all the time. So I'm going to learning this new skill. And you know, being a machinist is technical, and I wasn't real mechanical because I hadn't been basically raised that way, you know. So everything was new. Well, I went to Bill Hemphill one time. I said, Bill, man, I feel like I struggle so much with, you know, some of these things. And I said, when does it just kick in and you just catch on and it gets easy? And he said, he told me, he said, for some people, they never do. And I said, oh. So he didn't know it, but he ended my machinist career right there. I was done. I said, well, if there's no hope of me ever being really good at it, then why do I even want to mess with it, you know? So, you know, when I got out, I didn't continue. Well, you know, I sort of did my whole life long. I sort of dabbled with the concepts, the tools, the principles, and classes and things. You know, because it does it did a lot of good for me to get into that field, and it taught me a lot. So, all in all, beneficial. I'm over an hour, so I have to move on, man. My beard just keeps growing. It's getting hotter. Got to be able to cut it, so I got to get done. Love y'all. Have fun. Ron Holmes, Creek Boy, signing off on what is today? June the 4th, 2024. Bye.